Neither the National Electrical Code nor the Occupational Safety and Health Administration regulations explicitly prohibit the use of metallic supports for temporary NM wiring. However, industry best practices recommend avoiding the use of sharp-edged metallic supports. Sharp edges can damage the NM cable's insulation, exposing bare conductors. It is recommended to use insulated wire or cable ties. These methods provide electrical isolation and prevent accidental contact with bare wires. Electrical inspectors are responsible for ensuring compliance with safety standards and may have specific guidelines or interpretations regarding temporary NM wiring support. They may cite industry best practices or their own experience to justify their decisions. If NM cable is damaged by metallic supports, it could expose live conductors, increasing the risk of electrical shock or fire. Exposed conductors may not trip the circuit breaker or ground fault circuit interrupter if the cable is not properly grounded. Workers may come into contact with exposed wires, increasing the risk of injury. Engage with electrical inspectors to understand their specific requirements and concerns regarding temporary NM wiring support. Use insulated wire or cable ties to support NM cable and avoid sharp-edged metallic supports. Verify that temporary NM wiring is properly grounded to ensure proper circuit protection. Regularly test ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles to ensure they are operational. Ensure that temporary lighting is equipped with ground fault circuit interrupter protection to enhance safety. While the National Electrical Code and Occupational Safety and Health Administration do not explicitly prohibit metallic supports for temporary NM wiring, industry best practices and safety concerns recommend using insulated wire or cable ties for support. By following these practices, you can ensure the safety of workers and prevent electrical hazards. The 2023 National Electrical Code addresses temporary electrical power and lighting installations in Article 590. 4. It covers general requirements which includes using ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel on all 125-volt, single-phase, 15, 20, and 30-amp receptacle outlets that are not part of the permanent wiring of the building or structure and are in use by personnel. 4. B covers disconnecting means. Each branch circuit or feeder shall be provided with a disconnecting means. 4. C addresses the support of the temporary wiring. Cable assemblies and flexible cords and cables shall be supported in place at intervals that prevent damage to the cable. 4. D addresses physical protection. Suitable protection from physical damage shall be provided. 5 covers branch circuits. All branch circuits shall comply with applicable provisions of this code. 6 covers feeders. All feeders shall comply with Article 225. 7 covers time constraints. Temporary electrical power and lighting installation shall be permitted for a period not to exceed 90 days for holiday decorative lighting and similar purposes. 7. B covers permitted uses. Temporary electrical power and lighting installations shall be permitted during periods of construction, remodeling, maintenance, repair, or demolition of buildings, structures, equipment, or similar activities. 7. C addresses emergencies and tests. Temporary electrical power and lighting installations shall be permitted for experimental or development work and during emergencies. With that said, non-metallic sheathed cable, or NM cable, is a common wiring method used in residential and some commercial buildings. It consists of 2 or more insulated conductors and a grounding conductor, all encased in a non-metallic sheath. When using NM cable for temporary wiring, it's important to follow the National Electrical Code guidelines and industry best practices to ensure safety. Let's talk about the common issues and how to address them. One common issue is physical damage. NM cable is susceptible to physical damage, especially on construction sites where it can be stepped on, cut, or crushed. To mitigate this risk, the National Electrical Code requires that NM cable be protected from physical damage. This can be achieved by running the cable through conduit, using cable trays, or installing it in areas where it's less likely to be damaged. Support is another common issue. NM cable must be properly supported to prevent it from sagging or becoming damaged. The National Electrical Code specifies the maximum intervals at which an NEC cable must be supported, which vary depending on the size and type of cable. Generally, an NEC cable should be supported every 4.5 feet horizontally and every 12 inches vertically. Securing the cable properly is also important. When securing an NEC cable, avoid using staples or other fasteners that could damage the cable's insulation. Instead, use cable ties or cable clamps that are specifically designed for an NEC cable. Make sure that the fasteners are properly sized for the cable and that they are installed correctly. Grounding is another key consideration. An NEC cable includes a grounding conductor, which is used to provide a path for fault current to return to the source. It's important to ensure that the grounding conductor is properly connected to the electrical system's grounding electrode system. This will help to protect against electrical shock and fire hazards. Another important issue is ampacity. An NEC cable has a limited ampacity, which is the maximum amount of current that it can safely carry. When using an NEC cable for temporary wiring, make sure that the circuit is not overloaded. Use a clamp meter to measure the current draw of the connected loads and compare it to the cable's ampacity rating. You can find the ampacity in Table 310.16 of the National Electrical Code. Also use ground fault circuit interrupters for personnel. The National Electrical Code requires that all 125 volt, 15, 20, and 30 amp receptacles used for temporary power be protected by ground fault circuit interrupters for personnel. This helps to protect against electrical shock hazards in wet or damp locations. Finally, make sure to inspect your wiring regularly. Temporary wiring should be inspected regularly for damage or wear. Check for frayed insulation, loose connections, and other signs of problems. If you find any issues, repair or replace the damaged wiring immediately. Here are some additional tips for using an NEC cable for temporary wiring. First, use appropriately sized cable. Choose the correct size of an NEC cable for the application, based on the circuit's ampacity and voltage requirements. Second, avoid using an NEC cable in wet or damp locations. An NEC cable is not suitable for use in wet or damp locations unless it's specifically rated for that purpose. Third, protect an NEC cable from sunlight. Prolonged exposure to sunlight can degrade the cable's insulation, so protect it from direct sunlight when possible. Fourth, don't exceed the cable's bending radius. An NEC cable has a minimum bending radius, which is the smallest radius that it can be bent without damaging the cable. Exceeding the bending radius can damage the cable's insulation and reduce its ampacity. With that said, it is also important to mention that authority having jurisdiction, or AHJ, can also play a role. The authority having jurisdiction is the organization, office, or individual responsible for enforcing the requirements of a code or standard, or for approving equipment, materials, an installation, or a procedure. In many cases, the authority having jurisdiction is a local electrical inspector. The electrical inspector has the authority to interpret the National Electrical Code and to make decisions about whether or not an installation is in compliance with the code. If there is a disagreement between the electrical inspector and the electrician, the electrical inspector's decision is usually final. The electrical inspector may have specific guidelines or interpretations regarding temporary NEC wiring support. They may cite industry best practices or their own experience to justify their decisions. It is important to engage with electrical inspectors to understand their specific requirements and concerns regarding temporary NEC wiring support. Industry best practices recommend using insulated wire or cable ties to support an NEC cable and avoiding sharp-edged metallic supports. Verify that temporary NEC wiring is properly grounded to ensure proper circuit protection. Regularly test ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles to ensure they are operational. Ensure that temporary lighting is equipped with ground fault circuit interrupter protection to enhance safety. By following these practices, you can ensure the safety of workers and prevent electrical hazards. First, always energize the circuit before working on it. This will help to prevent electrical shock. Second, use properly insulated tools and equipment. This will also help to prevent electrical shock. Third, wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as safety glasses and gloves. Fourth, inspect the wiring regularly for damage or wear. Fifth, repair or replace any damaged wiring immediately. And sixth, if you are not comfortable working on electrical wiring, hire a qualified electrician. So, in summary, when using NM cable for temporary wiring, it's important to follow the National Electrical Code guidelines and industry best practices to ensure safety. Some best practices include protecting the cable from physical damage, supporting it properly, securing it with appropriate fasteners, grounding it properly, and not overloading it. And always follow safety precautions and guidelines.